Hi and welcome to this video in the QPSMR Companion Up and Running series. And in this video I'll be taking you through from start to finish, as it were, and taking you through the process of setting up a questionnaire, carrying out data entry and producing some tables and analysis from that data in a small QPSMR Companion project. So this video really is aimed at people who perhaps have never seen QPSMR before and want to get a feel for what it looks like to use, so the basics of the program without going into the detail. And it may be useful for people who are new users of QPSMR Companion who just want some orientation to find their way around the software. So the survey we're going to work on as an example today is this very short 6-question survey. And just to go through it very quickly, there's question 1, which is a yes/no question. Question 2, which is a list of magazines that people might read with none of these on the end. Question 3, which is filtered on people who say yes at question 1 with 6 different possible answers. Question 4, that's collecting some numeric data. And then finally, just 2 demographic questions. So a very basic questionnaire here. So let's go back to QPSMR now, and you can see I've got a sort of empty worksheet type of appearance here, and I can now start on preparing this questionnaire. So let's go straight into the insert menu and insert our first entry. And the first question is Q1, and you'll see to the right about I've got a drop down box here which lists the different types of entries that I can be putting in. So the first 2 on those lists are responses type questions. So the first one here, a single response only question, means that a respondent can't give more than one answer to that particular question. In other words, it's a yes/no type question, or a very good to very poor type rating scale, or maybe an age group, 16, 24, 25, 34, etc. So that's what the first one is. The second one, similar, a list of responses that a respondent could choose, but any number of answers is appropriate. So, for example, which brands have you ever bought? You could buy none of those brands, one of those brands, or indeed any number of those brands. The next 2 are for numeric data. So these 2 here for numeric data. The first one is where you want to collect a whole number. So maybe how many children do you have would be a whole number. Whereas if you wanted something that where a decimal point would be appropriate, you could ask, have a floating point question. So you could ask a question such as, how far did you travel to work? And they could answer 3.5 kilometers, for example. The 5th option on the list is a character text entry or question. And that's where you actually want to just collect some text. So it's not like an open-ended question. We'll come to that in a minute. A character text question will be something like an email address, a name, the city where you're in. Stuff that you tend not to analyse, you're just collecting to have alongside the data. The next 2 entries are date and time, which are mainly used for setting appointments in CATI. We're not covering that today. And in the verbatim text, that's an open-ended question where you want to actually record the exact text that someone writes on a paper questionnaire or an interviewer records on a CAPI survey, so that that data probably can be coded and added to the data at a later stage. And finally, the final question type we have is none, where it's not a question at all. It's just perhaps some instructions that the interviewer reads out, or indeed some instructions for the interviewer themselves. So I'm going to pick single here, and the text of my question is, do you own a bicycle? And I'm now ready to enter those responses. So I can click on this tab up here for responses, and you'll see a little icon here that lets me add the responses that I want. Yes, no, and not sure. And when I've completed that list, I can click OK. If I've got that list in a spreadsheet, or perhaps I can copy it from some other text document like Word, you can just paste them in there. You don't have to retype them. Just copy them from wherever they've come from, paste them in, and they should be absolutely fine. And now I can click X, and I come out now, and you can see that that question now appears in my worksheet with 3 responses here, which we just entered, as you know. All right, let's move on to the second entry. And let's go to question 2. Now this time I do want multiple responses to be allowed because I've got a list of different magazines. I'm going to set the maximum number of responses here to 5 because I've got 5 magazines. So which magazines do you read? And the same principle again, responses, click on here. Again, I could paste them in, but I haven't got them available to paste in, so I'm going to type these in, Bike Weekly, on my, if I could type, on my bike, on 2 wheels, biking for fun, and Bikers Monthly. And on the end of this, I'm going to add none of these. And I'm going to show you here just an example of some of the options, or an option that you can use in the QPSMR companion. There really are a lot of options available for different responses and different questions. I'm really not going to cover that here, but I'm going to just show you this one as an example. If I click on this response here, you can see that I can choose input, and I could say that this response has to be single. In other words, I wouldn't want anybody to choose this response with a brand or a magazine here. It wouldn't make sense. So only if they choose 1 to 5, they can't choose 6. And if they choose 6, they can't choose 1 to 5 effectively. So let's set up that question. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to be setting up question 3, which you may recall was filtered on people who said yes at question 1. So I'm going to set up a filter entry next. You can do this when you're inside the question, but here we're going to just set it up as a filter entry, as a separate entry. We're going to call this FQ1, and in here I can specify my definition. Now, there is a little bit of syntax you can use here as a shortcut. I'll show you the shortcut and then I'll show you afterwards the longer method. So if I type Q1/1, you can see like dynamically up pop the text here saying Q1 is yes, which if I want to I can edit. I could edit that to say all who own a bicycle, like that. But if I don't know how to type that syntax, and that syntax indeed can be quite complex, you can have ands, nots, less than, greater than, in the range of, brackets, all sorts of complex expressions to decide who answers a particular or satisfies a particular filter that you can then apply to a question. But if you don't know how to use that syntax, and let's just delete that, you can go into the tests tab here, and you can insert a test. So we can say, well, I want the test to come from question 1, and I could pick a range of answers. I could make it the opposite by checking the negative box, less than and greater than, equal to. But actually, I just want one value. I want that yes value there. I click OK, got that test. I can come out of it, and you can see now that I have that filter in there, which means that when I come to set up question 3 in a second, I can apply that filter to it. So let's insert question 3 now. It's single response, this one. And the question is, how often do you ride your bicycle? And again, same principle, insert responses, click on here, every day, most days, weekly, monthly, less often, not sure, varies. Okay, there's my answers. Now I want to apply that filter to this question. So I can apply the filter, and I'm applying FQ1, which we prepared just now. Click exit, and you can see FQ1 has been applied to Q3, which means only those people who said yes will get to answer question 3. So let's move on to question 4. This time we want a numeric, and we want to ask people the number of years. Now, when it's a numeric, you have to set the width. I'm assuming no one's ridden a bicycle for more than 99 years. So I can say, how many years have you been riding a bicycle? It's an integer, and that's all we have to do for that particular question. Now we can move to the demographic questions. I've got gender here, which of course is single. Type in gender here. Go to the responses. Again, you could paste these in if you had them. And indeed, you can copy these from a library if you want to. And the last question we've got here is age, single, age group. Insert the responses 16 to 34, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and 65 plus. So they're my age groups. Come out of that. And I can now save my questionnaire because that is it completed. All right, I'm going to do just one more thing, which perhaps you often do at the beginning. You want to put a title for this project. So I'm going to call this Bicycle Survey and save that. And that's that saved. Okay, so now we've got our questionnaire set up. We've given it a title. And we're ready now to move to the next stage, which is data entry or data collection. All right, so I'm going to go into the answers menu item here. Now you'll see here that I could just test my data entry to see what it looks like, to check my routing, to check that I've got all the questions in that I want. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to assume that's been done because the actual use of it is exactly the same as actually inputting data. So I'm going to make an input file. I'm going to call it bicycle data. I want to go live with this. It's a paper survey and click OK. So the first thing that's come up here is it's warned me that I haven't got any ZZZ entries, and what they are sort of system information such as the date, the time, the person who's entered it, the computer used, and so on, the number of entries, the number of key depressions, all that sort of data that can be collected by the system. We've not used any of that here, so I'm going to say that's absolutely okay and proceed, and I'm going to say this is called my data. I'm ready to use it. All right, so let's click OK, and we should be able to now start entering some data. Now, if our records are going to be automatically numbered, I can just add a record now. If I'm typing data in maybe, or entering data from some paper questionnaires that are sitting next to me, I can overwrite that serial number if they're not in sequential order. But I'm ready to add a record. And the first time I'm going to do this, I'm going to use a mouse to enter the data. And the second time I'll use the keypad and explain what keys I'm using as I go along. So we've got a green box around here to indicate that's the question it's waiting for entry, and that's mirrored over here with a green item. This item here is in a different colour because the grey ones are because they're not entered, but this one here is a different colour because not everybody's going to answer question 3, and you can see the effect of that as we go through some examples in a second. So let's click yes here to this one with the mouse. I'm going to pick answers 1, 3 and 5 here. I'm going to click the next button down here. I get question 3 because it's now turned green because I satisfied the filter at question 1. I'm going to pick 2 for that. Here I've got to enter the number of years, so I'm going to put in 20, female, 55 to 64, next, and that takes me to the end of the survey, if you like, and I can review those answers if I want to. There's the answers that were given and go back, or I can just carry on and say, okay, go on to the next record. Now I'm going to use the keypad and explain what I'm doing with the keypad. So I'm going to hit the enter key to add a new record. The appearance of the screen looks exactly the same, green, grey and so on the left hand side. If I use the keypad and type a 1, you'll see it just moves on to the next question. Now here, if I want to enter one answer, I can just type that code. So if I wanted just number 2, I could type 2 and it will proceed to the next question. If I want more than one answer though, I would use the / key, which is on the numeric keypad as well as the main keyboard. And I could say / 2 and 4. So let's do that, / 2, 4, and the enter key to say that I don't want any more entries for this particular question. On we go to question 3. Again, question 3 is available. I'm going to hit 1 this time. The number of years, I'm going to put 5. gender male, and I'm going to say 16 to 34. And this time I'm going to just go on to the next record. Let's go through this again. This time we'll route differently through the questionnaire. I'm going to type 2. So this time we are going to skip question 3. At this question I'm just going to type 1, and again it goes on to the next question, but you can see that question 3 has disappeared because we're routing past that question. 5 years, female, code 2, on to the next record, and so on. And of course you can mix the use of the mouse and the keyboard if you wish to. So I'm going to do one more entry. I'm going to say yes this time. 1, 2, and 5. Answer 4. 4 years, male, and we'll say that this person is in the 3rd age group. And with that, I'm going to close data entry. So I've now keyed in 4 records, and of course those 4 records are now available for any analysis that we want to do. So let's go to the Analysis tab now, and let's first of all get a summary of that data. So let's get that data, there it is, open it, and you can see I've instantly got a report summarising my data. 3 people said yes at question 1 and 1 said no. If we go to question 2, 3 people, or 75%, gave the first answer, and so on. Question 3, we got some answers. That's just the 3 people who answered that question. Question 4, we've got 1 person who said 4 years, 2 who said 5, and 1 who said 20, and so on through the gender and the age. So we've got some very quick summary data available. Let's go to the next step now. Let's look at what else we can do under analysis. Well, we've got a facility called data drill down, so let's look at that. So let's go to data drill down. Let's go past the settings. Let's open this data file, and you can see it's got 4 people here shown in my table over here, but I could then start dragging information here and very quickly getting information at the screen to look at my data. So now we can see very quickly we've got gender across the top, magazines down the side with a count of the magazines. If I want percentages, I can just click on this button here, and I can see that 75% of respondents chose Bike Weekly. Of the females, they both chose it, and so on. So I've got facilities here where I can explore my data and perhaps look at what I want to do when I come to my full analysis. Again, I'm not showing you all the facilities of QPSMR Companion. I'm just really taking you through the process from start to finish very quickly. All right, let's look at the next thing you might do, which is perhaps build a set of tables, maybe a table for every question or all 6 questions on our questionnaire. And a common thing to do is to analyse all these questions by a standard banner. So we might, for example, analyse all these questions by gender and age and perhaps question 1, whether they own a bicycle or not. So we can build a banner for that, and we can do that by inserting a variable. And what a variable is something that you're going to combine from 1 or more entries. So we're going to call this banner. We're going to go to responses now, and in the responses I'm going to add a block of responses, and I'm going to choose gender, and there they are. Let's click OK to that, and OK again, so it's brought in gender for me. And if that was a list of 10 things, that would save me typing 10 things. In here I can edit the text. I'm going to put a heading across that so that it identifies gender as being a male or female belonging to the gender heading. So that's okay. So let's go back to our responses and see what we want to put in next. Well, I might want to add in a response here, or I might want to block entry another thing. So let's maybe block entry here. Let's choose another one. Let's choose age this time. There's the 5 age groups. Let's key those in, and now we've got the 5 age groups, and again I could put a header in here, and that would be that done. If I wanted to, I could group these together now, so I could put these 2 age groups together, or maybe the last two groups. So let's perhaps just group these together at the end here. So let's edit this. I can do this again through the menus, or I can just type it if I know the syntax, and I could edit that down to say 55 plus. And having done that, I would probably not want that item there. So let's just delete that. So now I've got my ages into 4 groups rather than the 5 that were on the questionnaire. And finally, let's block insert or block in question 1's responses. And here we go. OK again. OK. And in here, we might just edit this to say owner of bicycle as a heading, note that backslash there that precedes the text. And having done that, I might decide I don't really want not sure to be on my banner for every table. So I'm going to click OK. So that's that. And all I need to do now is give it a title if I want to, perhaps call it banner. Save it, and banner's now ready for analysis. I need to save that. And I can now go back to analysis and set up some tables. And we do that by setting up what's called a QTF, a questionnaire or a QPS tables file. Let's open it up and call it My Tables. Open it up. And now we can very quickly set up some tables. So we can just again drag those into the tables box here. There we are, there's 6 tables. And if we want banner as our banner on every table, there we are. We in here said that the banner is that. Now we could add other tables. We might want to analyze question 4 by question 3, for example. We could slot those in here and renumber those tables and do all sorts of things to add to our volume of tables. But I'm just quickly getting 6 tables here with every question by a banner. So we run all the tables now. Click OK. And it's going to default by running those to a spreadsheet. You can also have them in text file format, but you can see very quickly here, I can look at any of my tables. I can look at table 1 and see that there's my 4 respondents. There's the 3 people who said yes, no. And here's my banners here of gender, age, and bicycle ownership, splitting it all down. And I've now got a perfectly usable settable tables, which I can just go between each of the tables here to look at my results. So there we are. We've gone end to end very quickly. We haven't looked at really any of the options in terms of setting up your questionnaire. We certainly haven't looked at all the options for editing data, changing data. We looked at keying in data. We also have looked at some tables, but not looked at all the options by any means for preparing tables. And as I say, you can have these tables either in a spreadsheet format as we have here, or as a text format. Well, I hope that was useful to you. There's a whole stack of other videos that you can watch that go into much more detail about some of the things that I've really only covered in brief today, and also all the options that you have and how you do some of the more complicated things in QPSMR Companion. But I hope it's been useful to you to get an overview of the software. Thank you.